The Crusades were military expeditions during the Middle Ages conducted by European Catholics to defend or expand Christian civilization. The Crusades developed as a result of the Christian world's long struggle with Islam. Islam's founder, Muhammad, formulated a concept of holy war, jihad, calling on Muslims to subjugate non-Muslims through warfare. Therefore, between AD 633 and 715, Arab armies conquered some two-thirds of the Christian world, including Mesopotamia, Syria, the Holy Land, Egypt, North Africa, and Spain. Through the 8th and 11th centuries, Christians and Muslims continued to fight each other. The Christians attempted to beat the Muslims back and reconquer territory that had been lost. Most of the fighting took place in border regions between the Christian and Muslim worlds, especially Spain, Italy, and what is now called Turkey, but was at the time a Christian region known as Anatolia, ruled by the Eastern Orthodox Byzantine Empire. In the 10th century, a warlike people known as the Seljuk Turks converted to Islam and took power in the Muslim world. The Byzantines were defeated by the Turks in 1071 at the Battle of Manzikert, losing almost all of Anatolia. In 1095, the Byzantine Emperor Alexius Comnenus sent messengers to Pope Urban II in Rome, requesting military aid from the West. Pope Urban gave a speech at the Council of Clermont, where he called on the knights of Europe to unite and march east to help the Byzantines. Christians had fought wars against Muslims before, but Pope Urban declared that anyone who fought in this war would be partaking in a sacred act and win remission from guilt associated with sin, that is to say, earn an indulgence. Pope Urban also emphasized the sacredness of Jerusalem, where Christ had walked, died, and rose. The Pope taught that by purging Jerusalem of Muslim rulers, the Christians would be performing a holy act in God's eyes. Essentially, the Pope envisioned crusaders as a new type of pilgrim, warrior pilgrims. The tradition of pilgrimage to the holy places in the East had long been a staple of life for medieval Europeans. Therefore, when the Pope suggested to European knights that they should conquer the holy city of Jerusalem and capture it for their own rule, this resonated with them deeply. Huge numbers of knights and common people organized and set out for the East. Several great lords at the time combined their armies for this mission, including Godfrey Bouillon, Raymond IV of Toulouse, and Bohemond. This was the First Crusade that ever occurred, and is now known as the First Crusade, 1096 to 1099. It was very successful, conquering and organizing several new Crusader states in Syria and Palestine. The most important of these states was the Kingdom of Jerusalem, with its capital in the holy city of Jerusalem. Over the course of the 12th and 13th centuries, Christians would continue to fight crusades against the Muslims in the Holy Land, with Jerusalem changing hands several times. During this same period, the popes would call many crusades in Spain and Portugal against the Muslim occupiers in those regions. Gradually, the Crusaders drove the Muslims out of the whole of the Iberian Peninsula. Also, the popes sanctioned crusades in the Baltic against the pagan people who dwelt in those territories, the Northern Crusades. While the Crusades in Spain and the Baltic succeeded, the campaigns in the Holy Land eventually began to fail, with the Muslims driving the Crusaders out of Syria and Palestine completely in 1291. In the 14th century, the Ottoman Turks came to power in the Islamic world and eventually grew to be the greatest power in Islamic history. Having driven the Christians out of the Holy Land, the Muslims conquered Constantinople and drove into Eastern Europe. During the early modern era, crusades were no longer about conquering the Holy Land, but trying to stop the powerful Ottomans from conquering Europe. The popes called crusades against the Ottoman advance, but many failed. The Ottoman Empire continued to grow, swallowing Christian Greece, Crimea, Wallachia, Hungary, Moldavia, and threatening to capture Austria and Italy. Conversely, the Crusades in Spain continued to go well, with Queen Isabel and King Fernando destroying the last Islamic hold in Granada in 1492. In the late 16th century, the tide began to turn again. European powers formed holy leagues, sanctioned with papal crusades. The Ottomans were defeated by a holy league at the Battle of Lepanto in 1571, and another holy league defeated the Ottomans decisively in 1683 at the Battle of Vienna, and 1697 at the Battle of Zenta. To recap, the era of crusading began in 1095 with the First Crusade, and continued roughly into the 17th century. A crusade had several defining characteristics, which distinguished it from another military expedition. 1. It was called by a pope. 2. Participants in a crusade earned an indulgence, remission of punishment associated with sins. And 3. A crusade was fought either to hold a sacred site or to expand or defend Christian borders. For a concise overview of the First, Second, Third, and Fourth Crusades, please watch my video, The Crusades, 1095 to 1204, a concise overview for students.